we've been bombarded with questions now, so
Okay,
I'll throw these at you quickly, and
let me get
we'll
some
see how we
water
go.
then.
Yeah, no
Let me
worries.
get ready.
Yeah, again, thanks again for showing your work. It's fantastic, and to get a sneaky peek at all the topology and everything.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and I really like the the just going for it essentially, and you have to commit 100%.
I just learned so much by doing that. I
Yeah.
mean, before it was just, like having a lot of layers is good. It's nice.
Yeah.
But it's when you have too many layers, you kind
Mhm.
of get lost with it.
Yes.
And when you go back to simplicity,
Yeah.
it makes things simpler. More
Well, I guess
challenging
it makes
though.
it more fun as well, because I guess in a production environment, you are always held back by the client and the notes. So that's why you got to keep
Yes,
it flexible, nodal, procedural. But
exactly.
you almost have to think too much sometimes in layers and stacking and making sure one thing's connected to the other. But when you can just go at it 100%, makes it a bit more enjoyable sometimes.
Completely.
So yeah, there's a whole bunch of questions. I'm going to start from the top and just work down. First one's from Sean. She's asking, would you recommend building a model from the bones up or focusing more on the surface anatomy and bony landmarks? And how do you go about building the muscles and layering them? Separate subtools for each muscle? Yeah.
So it depends. For instance, if you're just looking to do like a skin, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. If you have a skeleton, it's gonna be very helpful. But if you don't have one, I think starting with the skeleton gonna make things a bit too much complicated. So I will recommend just start with a skin and then maybe after that do a skeleton, because doing a skin, it's easier. You're gonna get a lot of things and then you can do a skeleton and then you could go back to a skin. If you have a skeleton already, I mean, the more information you get, the more useful it is. But it's in my end, I didn't start from a skeleton. The first thing I did was a skin. So I would say you can do both. It's a bit of a non-answer, but it's both works. You don't have like a general, you don't have like a main rule. You can start with both. You will do mistakes in any case, I think, but what matters is that you do many iterations. So that should be fine. And for the muscle, so I used to do like one subtool for every muscle. So I will first do like a big layout and then slowly move them. But actually I can, if you want, I can quickly show you. It will get very difficult to move around. So what I can do instead is for you, first of all, go back to normal skin. Now what I tend to do is, so I've been working on a anatomy Bison. I've been redoing it. And now what I do with my anatomy is that I have it in one subtool. And the good thing about it is I can now very easily, if I just do my polygroups, I can very easily select them and isolate them. So if you have like all your muscles, they all combine into one subtool. And then I can select, for example, these three, and it's very easy. If you have like a lot of subtools, at the end you have like 90 subtools and you constantly trying to zoom in, trying to understand, okay, which one is which. When you want to hide 2 or 3, it gets very messy. So I will say keep it maybe in 2 parts. So one subtool for the thick, one subtool for the shoulder, one subtool for the main body, one subtool for, keep it in 5 or 6 different subtools. Separate mesh, very important. I think it's a very good thing that you keep it separate mesh, but same subtool for the same group of muscle.
Great. Thank you. And Jacqueline's just asking a slightly different topic. She's asking if you can talk a little bit about your look dev process.
So my look dev process. So it's as I was saying, it's very simple. I mean, I normally have, if I can show, for example, for my fringy, where is it? Yes, it's here. So for this guy, I just have like my texture map, my roughness map, and it's gonna be, like you said, it's gonna be very simple. So I just like do first my sculpt. Once I'm happy with it, I'm gonna start doing a color. I start a bit of everything at the same time. So I'm gonna do a bit of color, a bit of sculpting. I don't wait until I've finished the sculpting to start doing for example, the lighting. I can show you this. Where is it? Images, result. No, sorry. Progress. So when I start, I have like my mesh, and I start a bit of lighting. I do like a first version of the skin, and like slowly I get everything done together. So I'm gonna improve my displays, and I'm gonna improve my color. I'm gonna improve my lighting, and my process is just it's very like straightforward. It's a personal project, so I'm gonna test it in different lighting environments because sometimes it helps you spot different mistakes. For example, for the Bison, I've been using the look dev scene from your website, which has been very useful, and on top of other HDRI, and just like doing different environments helps me moving just simply like moving my look dev forward.
Yeah, and I guess I find that's very important to see stuff in context, where when you're just looking at a gray shaded model for 2-3 weeks, you don't kind of see all the shapes and forms, but as soon as you start throwing it under different lights, putting different shaders on it.
But like I seen, for example, on this one, it's like early stage. I think it was just to test the model, because I started from a bias match I had done years ago, back when I was a student. I threw it into Maya straight away. Then, like each process, I will bring it to Maya and kind of test it, because you need to take it out of ZBrush quite often.
Yes, no, I very much agree with that sort of process. And this one is from Christian. He's asking, this is about symmetry and when to break it. Do you have a file for symmetry and then create a new file when you break the symmetry? So you
I would say yes. It's always good, because sometimes you kind of start first of all, you're gonna free your mind, so in case you mess it up, it's kind of fun, you have a backup. Actually, for Fringy, I override my symmetrical file, so I don't have a symmetrical file anymore for this one. But I would say yes, increment. So if at some point you need to go back to it, you can, and always keep a symmetrical base mesh. Duplicate your subtool and then break your symmetry, but always keep a backup. You never know.
Yeah. And this is a question from Veronica. She's asking, here we go. How do you make sure you achieve the right balance between texture, XYZ maps, and hand sculpted details, and just so you can still get a nice natural look?
I would say it comes with practice, and a good example of that is, for example, my LFOs. I considered to be not the best result I could have done. For example, even though for this one I use texturing XYZ, I found the result much better into this one where I use the flip normal alphas. It's just something that comes with practice, and it takes time. It's just like you have to look at your references, and it's just something that it takes a lot of time to get it, and it takes a lot of different projects. And I would say to that, when you're doing a project, don't wait to get a perfect result the first time. That's why I did 4 or 5 different écorchés, because you won't get a perfect result, but on the second one, third one, it will get better. It will get better with time. So it's practice, I would say, for this one.
I guess that's the same with the workflow or techniques. So I guess a lot of people ask, how do you do something? What's the correct workflow for doing this, that, and the other? And there's 100 workflows to achieve something, as long as you get the end result that you're after.
Exactly. And maybe I would say try different workflow. Don't stay open to different options. Try to change it a bit, and as you change it, it's gonna get easier, and you can realize other things. And you're gonna find your own workflow. Some workflow works better than others. There is not best workflow, or even software. Any software. I mean, if you want to use Blender to sculpt, it's perfect as long as it suits you. That's what matters.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Christian's asking, would it be better to have one Udim let's say it's 16K that covers the whole character and asset, or would it be better to have several 2K, 4K with the asset chopped up into separate Udims or UVs?
I will say it's better to have Udims simply because, first of all, most software yet don't support, say, 16K. For example, I know Substance gonna cap the size of your map depending on your graphic card. It's gonna get much more difficult for render. I think Arnold can calculate 100 2K Udims in like 5 seconds, but it's gonna take him like 5 minutes to calculate 4 16K Udims. So I would say it's better to have 6 or 8 2K or 4K Udims rather than just 116. Normally, what I do for my project is 1 8K Udim for my personal project, and for the creatures like the Bison, the Lion, or the Elephants, 6 to 8 Udims in 4K.
Okay, great. And how do you approach the modeling of the mouth? Do you go for open or closed, just so it's rigger friendly?
Well, I think for the Bison, I did it. It depends. I think for the Bison, I did it closed. I first, I think, modeling a bit open, and then I close it. So for the Bison, I did it open, close, sorry. But for the Lion, I did it, if I zoom in, I did it a bit open. So it's, normally in a production, the rigger will ask you to be closed, but not entirely closed, like slightly closed. So not completely open. So you have like a bit of opposite movement and then the jaw open.
Great. Let me get that one done. So this is from Michael. It's about poly painting. Do you use the history recall for poly paint when working without layers? Would that be possible with poly paint?
I think it wouldn't be possible simply because when I'm doing poly paint, I think on a mesh it will be between 15 and 20 or 30 million polygons. And what ZBrush does is that to prevent any crash, it deactivates the endo history. But for the fringy, for example, I record myself doing all the poly paint process, which is, by the way, if you guys are interested, I published it into my ArtStation. I published how I poly painted, and I simply used OBS, which is a free small software.
Yeah.
Then you can use to record your screen, and I just simply use that one, and then into Adobe Premiere, fast forwarded like ×3 to make sure it wasn't like getting too boring.
Cool. Okay, great. And this is from Emilio. It's about your fringy. Did you use alphas or sculpted all the details by hand?
I used alphas. So for this one, I used flip normal alpha skin alpha. So which one? It's available on the software. I've been using it for a lot of my project. I just find them like so handy. They're very good quality, and they allow you to. So if you go to brushes, I've been using flip normal skin kits, and that's the one. I have other skin kits, but that's the main one I use, and that's the one I use for the Bison as well. And it's not as good quality as texturing is YZ for sure, but like I was saying earlier, it's just so much more nice to use, so much more like user friendly, and to practice the skin flow, the wrinkle flow that I mentioned earlier, which is very difficult to get. It's perfect because you can do many iterations very fast.
Great, good stuff. And this is from Shanto. She's asking, how much time do you spend for personal work daily?
How much time do I spend? It depends. If it's after work, I will do maybe. I will try to work daily, even if it's 1 hour, maybe sometime 1 hour before work. Between anything between 1 and 3-4 hours. I leave myself some space, obviously, for I do a lot of sport as well to free my mind. But yeah, anytime between, sometime I won't work. I will try, yeah, anytime between 1 and 3-4 hours per day.
Okay, great.
Aside my work.
Yeah. And for this is from Nicholas, who's asking about just different creatures. How do you study the anatomy for different creatures like your fringy? And this is, I guess, specifically for anatomy that doesn't exist in nature.
I guess it will
Yeah.
it will depend where my inspiration comes from. For example, for the fringy, I think you spotted it. It's simply a lizard with 6 legs. So for this one, I took kind of the reference. It was kind of more, if I show some of the reference I've got from him, it was more wrong folder, more kind of mixing the reference I liked. So for example, I really liked the shape of this lizard. So I took like his legs. I really like the head of this one. So it's more like it's doing like a Frankenstein, building a Frankenstein. And where it gets difficult is that you have to make sure it looks good at the end and that all the different reference that you're using mix well together. And that's why I would say when you're doing like anatomy creatures, always start with something realistic that you can copy. Don't start with something that doesn't exist, because it needs a certain time to get around and master anatomy. And if you start right away by doing something not real, it's gonna be a bit more difficult. So I would say, yes, start with something, and then depending on the inspiration for my where is it, for my elephants, I got my inspiration for many different animals and shapes. So it depends on what I want to do.
Okay, great. And Jay is asking, so we've got a few more questions still. It's quite a chunk full. Hopefully you're okay time-wise, Nicholas.
Oh no, it's perfect. Don't worry. It's
great.
I'm more than happy to answer.
So Jay is asking, how do you start adding wrinkles and details in ZBrush? Should we do it after we retopo, or should we do it to the same mesh we created with Dynamesh?
You can start before you do the retopo. It's really up to you. Obviously, I do the retopo quite soon because I like to, once I've blocked my forms, because I like having like a cleaner mesh with clean UVs. With the Dynamesh, I find it very handy to to block shape, but I don't really like it when it comes to add detail. But this would be more up to you. And the good thing about ZBrush is that you can come back to, even though if you added, like, for example, if I've added like all my detail here to my maximum subdivision, I can always come back to my subdivision 1 and then start modifying, anything. And it's with ZBrush, you get this flexibility of being able to start your detail and then go back to subdivision 1. And that one thing you can't do with the Dynamesh. So I would say my personal workflow is, as soon as I've blocked my shapes, I retopo, and then if needed, I update my retopo and then reproject. The project all from ZBrush works extremely well. So I use it all the time.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess when you're using Dynamesh, it can get pretty exciting to start going in with wrinkles and adding details, but then you figure out you can't change the broad shapes without subdivisions easily.
I find it very difficult to, especially if you have like thickness issues, you kind of mesh everything, it does holes everywhere, and it can get messy quite quickly, I found with Dynamesh.
Yeah. And this question from Amish, who's asking, how much time approximately did you spend texturing the Elephorce? Did you paint the albedo in ZBrush to start with?
No, so the Elephorce took me forever to paint because I was struggling so much with the color. I think I spent at least like 3 to 4 weeks. So I painted everything into Mari, and I painted my maps, my displaced map into Mari. So I used it for the color. I had like all the maps, very complex shading network. But it was just such a mess, and I struggled so much for it. But it was like one of the first creatures I was doing, so with practice as well, I got better. But no, for the Elephorce, I did everything into Mari, nothing in ZBrush.
Okay. This is a kind of a question about Mari from Sean as well, who's asking, do you use the node editor or in Mari? And do you know any good material for learning the Mari node editor for doing display work?
At home, unfortunately, the version of Mari I have doesn't have the node editor. At work, I use it, but I never used the node, the shader from Mari, because what I do is mostly like skin. So no, unfortunately, I can't answer that because I've never used any shader into Mari.
Okay. And let me just jump back up here. So this is from Elena, who's asking, when you model the mouth bag with the mouth, when you model the mouth bag, if you model with the mouth, sorry, when you model the mouth bag, if you model with the mouth closed, it says question mark, I think that's a question. So yeah, when you model the mouth bag, do you model it with the mouth closed? And do you create it in Maya during the retopo stage? How do you recommend? So this is a number of questions, so it's 3 in 1. I'll start with the first one. When you model the mouth bag, do you model it with the mouth closed?
What I will do when I model it is, and I think I've got like the 3 questions, is like really how I handle the fact that you have like some kind of overlapping skin. Is that correct in the coming question? Is that something like this? Is how do I do it? Basically, how do I do mouse retopo?
I think it's more, how do you model the mouth bag? It could be, I think Elena, if you want to put it in the chat, maybe to clarify. Maybe I'm not asking.
But in the meantime, I can like answer what I think I've understood. So basically, what I do when I get to the retopo stage and to the mouse, I usually split my mesh in 2. So I will, when I'm in ZBrush, I will just simply take my model, and for example, I will take this one, and I will just like take this part, and then I will export it. So I will get like a higher resolution. I will export it, and I will do the same for the top part. Then I will like kind of be able to model inside like very nicely and without having to bother with the other part. And then when I'm done with each part individually, I will get to the point where I'm kind of connecting them together. Yeah. But actually, it's something I show in detail on the Bison modeling tutorial. I explain this, and I think I spent like 1 hour explaining just how I do it and how I connect everything, and how not to get lost with. It's a bit of a tough area to deal with.
Okay, great. And then connected to that is, do you create it in Maya during the retopo stage? This is to do with the mouth bag still, so I guess it's a mix of both.
Yes, I mean, if it's for this one, I did everything. Yes, I did everything into Maya, so I don't use anything from the ZBremesher. The ZBremesher will only use it into a personal project, but for this one, I did everything by hand.
Okay, and just follow-up question from Elena. Do you recommend blocking your first pass in ZBrush?
Yes, I personally, it's up to you, up to your workflow. But for me, the only part I do in Maya is the retopology, the UVs, and the render. But everything else, all the blockouts, this one I show here, this is from ZBrush, and any part I do comes from ZBrush.
Okay, great. How do you retopology the concept project? Do you have any magic retopo tools?
Yes, I do. Like I showed before, so if I show my Cleapa, for example, it's simply it's just a ZBremesher. It's simply my secret tool is ZBremesher. I don't care too much, even if it's not looking good, as long as it holds it more or less. I will simply go into my mesh. Obviously you duplicate it with all your detail you do into geometry, ZBremesher. You can increase the poly count if it's not enough. And once you're done, you simply go to subtool. You make sure you have only your 2 skins, so one with the detail, one with your base mesh, and you just simply go to project and project all, and that works like magic. It's fantastic.
Amazing. And I guess that's mainly for concept projects. You wouldn't do that for production assets, or have you?
No. For production assets, you end up all, except if like very specific tasks, but in general, you always do it by hand.
Okay. Marine's asking, did you ever try the Maya muscle system? If so, what's your opinion on it?
So I've never tried any muscle system, to be honest. I've done a lot of muscle écorché and models, but I've never tried the simulation. I have like some friends who are riggers and who do the muscle simulation for me.
Yeah.
And I know like all my friends are using Ziva because it's more stable, I think, but I'm not sure about this one. I'm not the expert to ask this question to.
No worries. This is from Katerina, who said, you mentioned having a generalist background. How helpful has this been in production? And do you work on surfacing as well as modeling?
Well, in terms of modeling, I only do creatures right now because I decided to specialize myself into that. But having a generalist background definitely helps because simply, for example, because I work a lot with riggers, a lot with groomers and texture and look dev artists, because when you kind of know how to do someone else's job, you will understand what it needs, what is his priorities, and then you're gonna be able to be more efficient working with them. And when you know what someone, if you've never worked with a rigger and you need to work with him, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand what he needs. Then if you don't, and that happen, I suggest you ask as many questions as possible and like ask him, yeah, what he needs. And but yeah, being generalist allows me to do I do all my lighting, all my compositing myself. So yeah, it's pretty handy.
Yeah. I guess nowadays as well with people, when you're presenting work, people almost want to see stuff in context as well. So a bit of light, a bit of color, a bit of shadow
Yeah, and
helps.
I've tried in all my project now. I just like to go further than just like putting into a look dev scene. Obviously, it's kind of nice, but sometimes, for example, for the fringy, for the clapper, I like to because I want to get a mood. I like to get a backstory, and I want to tell a story through just one picture. So getting it into context and through lighting,
great.
It's helpful. Yeah.
This is from Jay, who's asking, should we always place a reference sheet in the background in Zbrush for the exact size of the creature or animal? Or what should we do? I guess this is more to do with the scale, getting that in a good place.
You mean the scale of the model?
I think it's the scale of the creature in terms of matching, a realistic proportions and stuff.
Well, it depends. I would say for your first creature, obviously, the more you master the anatomy, the more you can get away by getting further away from the anatomy. But I would say when you first do your creatures, maybe if I got the question right, I would say don't get too ambitious. Start maybe like by making like an animal with maybe 2 heads or just 6 legs, and then, for example, my Elephos, I wanted to do everything at once. I ended up like spending 3 months on it. I ended up having like a project too big for my knowledge, and I struggled a lot. So I would say, don't start too ambitious. Don't start small, and on the next one do a bit better.
Yeah,
or a bit bigger.
Simple. Great. This is from Simon, who's asking, when you create a skeleton or even the muscles, do you make it from scratch or do you use a pre-made asset and adapt it?
For the muscle, I made it from scratch. For the grizzly, I made everything from scratch. I think I've showed you a bit earlier as a bison, which I've been reusing some of the part of the grizzly, but most of the time I will start from scratch because it just makes sure I adapt the good topology. For the skeleton, sometime I will do it from scratch. I think I got like 1 or 2 scans free of use. So I think I've used this one, and then I will just duplicate the parts and use them as needed, and sometimes change them if needed.
Great. This is from Marine. She's asking, if you were to make a rabbit for a production, how would you handle the back legs? Would you make them stretch out or just in an ideal position?
That's a bit difficult. It depends. I will try to do them a bit loose, not completely tanned. I will try to look for a reference where it's maybe on the side and where the legs are a bit, like when it's sleepy and the legs are relaxed. And when you have like a model in production, most of the time they will be with the hand completely like this. So they need to be relaxed. I would say you get your each member relaxed. So then when you have the rigger, it's going to be able, it needs to be midway, because if you have, for example, your hand like this, then it's going to be very difficult for the rigger to move it. But if you get your hand like this, it's going to be very difficult as well. So I would say try to do your rabbit with everything relaxed. So the rigger has to do midway inside and outside.
Great, thank you. And how would you approach modeling? How do you approach model scale in ZBrush? In production, you are supposed to work real scale, but that seems to be a mystery topic. That's from Christian.
Oh, that's very, very, but I recently got the answer to that. So I will always start into ZBrush, quickly do my first concept. I export it to Maya, and I scale it to the real scale is going to be in, and then I re-import it. And if you export and re-import your base mesh, then it automatically updates your mesh. But sometimes, for example, if you scale it by 10, then the size of your brush gonna be super tiny. And I recently found a solution to that. If you go to preference, and then it's a bit hidden. It's not Gizmo 3D, it's in draw. And you've got dynamic brush scale. By default, it's at 1. And if you put it to 0.1, then it's gonna change the dynamic scale, overall dynamic scale of your brush. So you can adjust it. And for example, at some point I get a mesh and my 1000 size brush is like as big as the one I currently have on my screen. And if you update this dynamic range, then you can solve it. But you should always bring it as soon as possible into Maya to get your scale right, and you work on scale. Because after, if you need to update your model, it needs to be the right size, it needs to be at the right spot, it needs to be symmetrical. But it's very tough. I don't understand why it hasn't been fixed in ZBrush yet.
Yeah, I guess every application's got their own scale.
Yeah, we got used to it. We got used to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, wherever you're rendering, it's good to just set it in that application and then send it from there.
Yeah.
This is from Doug, who's asking, what source do you use for the free of use skeleton scans?
I think you have, I don't remember actually, but you have like few software. I think they are the same as the one you get statue from. I think if you type free of use skeleton, you have like 3D Sketchfab that provide one like few skeleton completely free of use. So yeah, feel free to check them, and they have as well like statues of animals, of humans. So it's a very good exercise as well to check them and to kind of get the sense of the proportion and the plane. For example, I was mentioning earlier, they're very good reference.
There's also quite a few scientific medical visualization anatomy scans. You can get skeletons and things like that. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but I found quite a few, a few online that you can find.
Yeah, but that's something definitely you can find fairly easily. You have like a lot of content, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah. It's from Emily, who's asking, in ZBrush, do you use Sculptress Pro? She's noticed that some parts of your mesh are highly detailed compared to the rest in lower subdivisions. Great masterclass, by the way, she says.
Oh, thank you very much. So no, it's going to be a very stupid answer, but I actually never use it because I don't have the logo here, and I never found how to activate it. So I just end up subdividing my mesh. But actually, when you see that some place has more resolution than other, it's just because of my topology, and because I've made it that way. Because, for example, I know, if you're referring to what you're seeing right now, I know that my nose is going to need more resolution than my body. So that's why for the same subdivision, you have much more quality here than here. For the same surface, you have maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of polygons. But normally, I will always try to do something like quite even. And I will use Sculptis Pro if I knew how to activate it.
Fair enough. This is more related to kind of jobs and demo reels. Is there some place for junior modelers in the creature department? And if so, what kind of pieces would you advise to put on their show reel? should we focus on écorchés or push it to the skin side of things?
I wouldn't specifically say do écorché. I mean, that's something that you're gonna need only if you plan on doing, like, for example, on the rigging side, you plan on doing like muscle simulation. It has been a help for me because it helped me understand anatomy, but I would say you don't necessarily have to do it to understand it. It depends if you want to do, like, if you just do skins. I mean, I think among my creative friends, I'm the only one who has done écorché. All of them have just been doing creatures and animals. So it's, if you feel like doing an écorché, go for it. But if you don't have one in your reel, it won't prevent you at all from getting a job into as a creature artist.
Great, thanks. I'm going to stick with it, just a few more questions on kind of, jobs and things like that. And portfolios. This is from Jacqueline, who's asking, any advice for landing our first 3D modeling job?
So to be honest, I think to get my first job, it took me about 5 months. So I would say do personal projects. They are the key thing. It will show your dedication. And I mean, it took me 3 écorchés to get my first job, but it finally worked. Mine was very specific because I wanted to be a creature modeler. If you're doing like 3D modeling, if you're looking for art surface, I will do at least 1 or 2 personal projects on this very specific department that you want to get in. If you want to model cars, do this, but yeah, personal project.
Yeah.
So that's the key to everything.
Yeah, and I guess that doesn't stop, right? Because again, you're working now, but you're still doing personal projects, you're still learning, you're still developing.
Yeah, because I just find it, like you said a bit earlier, when you're working in a professional environment, you have the client has the final decision, and it's not really your creatures. Yeah. So when it goes to personal project, I like to be, it's mine because I take all the decision. It's more challenging, it's more difficult, but I find it, it's because I find it funny, and it's and I do it because I love it.
I guess for let's say an employer who's looking for an artist, if you give them a reel of a film, they don't quite know what you did. But if you can say, here's my Fringy, here's my Bison, here's my lion model, then they know that's all your work as well. They can kind of tell this is your personal stuff. Everything's been handmade by you, which is great.
And it shows your determination, the fact that you're able to finish a project, because it's very difficult. I mean, like working 1, 2, 3 hours every night is sometimes tough, but it always pays off, and it shows your dedication mostly.
Right. This is from Simone, who's asking, for a model tetra artist trying to get into the industry, do you think it's better to learn with the production workflow that you showed before, or is it something that you will learn once you get the job?
I would say it's better to start by doing more of a production workflow. Because if you do it, for example, on a personal project, you want this personal project to get you this job. So when you see a recruiter, you need to show him that you know how to do it. Once you've got your job and you've got 3 projects, then you can feel free to, getting a bit dirtier when you're doing the retopology, but always start by showing that, yes, you can do it. And once you know how to do it and you've shown it, then you can get away from it.
Yeah, I guess the employers kind of want you ready to go from the offset where possible. Okay, this is from Rich, who's asking, at what stage do you hire your subdivision level? So at what stage do you subdivide your assets? You subdividing?
I think I will subdivide quite early, but not too much. It depends. I mean, for example, this one, I think for the Bison, I started subdividing about maybe 1 or 2 hours working on it. I will maybe subdivide to division 2 or 3 maximum, and I will focus a very long time into the main proportion. In ZBrush, you can go back to subdivision 1 very early, but at the first few 4, 5, 6 hours, until I'm happy with my global shapes, I won't start doing any detail. And if I start doing detail, it will still be very rough, just rough lines. And so, I stick to the low resolution. There is no general rule. Don't get too soon to the detail, because it will then restrain you from moving things around.
Okay, great. And this is from Fala Nerina, who's asking, what are the artists that inspire you the most?
It's a shame. I don't remember his name. It's called Tony. It's a creature modeler, and it's actually the one who inspired me doing creature work. But I've got like a few others. I've got Antoine Vernet-Caron, which is a very good friend who is actually working at ILM. I've got Damien Guimoneau. He was a creature modeler on Lion King. I've got, like all the big names. If you take Aristo Coloconte, which is like a fantastic creature concept artist, even like Chris Costa, all the big, mainstream artists, June's Anatomy, I mentioned a bit earlier. I really like the work of Gail Kinchabon. Many artists. I'm always on ArtStation, even on Instagram, checking out other artists. Because it's always a good inspiration, and it's always like good to see what they're doing, what they're up to, and it kind of challenged myself to, like each time to not comparing to them, but to kind of say it's just a general inspiration to see what they're coming up with, and it's always okay. They've done this, how they've done it, and it's always being in an environment where you see like other people working and creating things always helps you. Bringing some creativity as well.
Great. And Tom Jones is asking, he's saying, hi, really insightful information from Nicolas, so thank you very much. He's asking, could you, let him know at what point for your personal projects or concept sculpts would you pose the sculpt? So, because he finds that he ends up destroying the muscle forms, and so do you have any advice for when to start that transition to a pose without losing too much detail?
It depends really on the type of character. I would say it's more about the silhouette. So once you're kind of happy with the silhouette, once you're kind of happy with the proportion, I would say slowly start adding on this one. So this was the 6 steps where I was working on the anatomy, and once I got really pretty happy with like the main proportion, I kind of say, okay, now I think this is the time where I'm gonna start to covering that. And I would say take your time, make sure to build a strong base, and don't start too soon. Just like it's okay if it takes time, because this is what matters the most. And if you have a strong structure and once you're happy with it, the rest gonna be much easier and much faster. But as much time as needed, there is no rush for this. And if you have a model with not so great detail but a good proportion, you will get a better final result than having a model with good detail but poor proportion, or poor proportion.
Okay, great. And Emily, your question's pretty similar in terms of when to go about posing, so hopefully that answered that question. Next question from Tiff Hall, who's asking, do you ever use the polygroups to help with Z remeshing when doing personal projects?
Yes, sometimes I do. I think for the fringy, so let's say this one will be, yes, I definitely use it, but sometimes for the inner mouse, I will, for example, this one, I show it a bit earlier. If I had to do this one, simply do a Z remesh by polygroups, I will just simply take that area. If I show my polygroups, then do a polygroups here, and then just like have my 2 separate polygroup, and then into Z remesher, just make sure you tick keep groups. But yes, I do it quite often into my personal project.
Okay, great. And we have just 2 questions left, and we'll make these the last 2.
Okay.
So Abishan is asking, this is back to the mouth bag. Do you have any tips for when and how to make a mouth bag? Because he's always running into trouble when modeling and retopologizing a mouth bag.
I will say if you're struggling, try to do it with the mouth slightly open. It will help you like to kind of understand. The lips corner puller are really difficult to get, so try to do it with the mouth slightly open. And like I said a bit earlier, if you're doing the Z remesh, try to export the lower part separately from the top part, and then you can do your Z remesh separately, and at the end you connect the sides.
Great. And you also mentioned that there's a more detailed workflow example demo of that in your Bison tutorial, right? So
yes, in my Bison modeling tutorial, I think I spent like 6 hours doing, so this retopology, I do it from scratch. So I do everything of the modeling from scratch to the final result of this Bison into the tutorial. I don't cut anything, so you will see all the retopo parts. So if you have any question on how to do this, you can check it out.
Great. So this is from Chris, who's asking, do you think it is valuable to visit the animal you're making in real life at the zoo, museum, farm,
yes, I would say yes, because it's 2D reference, they're good, but it will be always 2D, and there is nothing like having the actual, even if it's from far, there is nothing like having the actual character in front of you, or the actual animal. And for the eco-shares, I visited the 3D Body World. It was actually in London a few months ago.
Yeah.
And seeing the actual eco-share in real life was just insane. I mean, it's just, you don't really get the sense of volume until you see it. And so, yes, as much as possible, as soon as you can. A few months ago, actually, when I walked, and probably maybe we'll finish by that, when I walked on Gary. This one, we actually went in north of London to visit an actual raccoon, and we took some pictures, and we spent like one afternoon with him. And even if like the picture, we almost couldn't get anything away from them, just seeing the actual animal and seeing like how it moves and how it reacts to anything was a huge help, because there is not such thing you can get in a video.
Yeah.
Than in actual.
It's the same as when you see like a tiger or a lion in real life. I mean, only at the zoo and stuff. There's a power that you don't feel from an image, that when you see the thing up close and it's there,
completely,
it's a completely different emotional attachment you get to the animal. Like you're saying, the raccoon, moving around, even though you can't take a picture, there's an emotional connection you get to that creature in real life.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so last 2 questions. Guillaume is asking, will there be a replay of this conference? Yeah, I'm going to upload this. It's probably going to be up by around tomorrow afternoon on the Cave website. And Nicholas, you're also going to post it on your YouTube.
Yes, I'm going to post it into my ArtStation and into my YouTube channel.
Okay, great. So you can find it on Cave, or just again check out Nicholas's work on ArtStation YouTube. You'll find it there. And this is the last question from Jay, who's asking, if we have a great interest in creatures and animals, so should we fully focus on it, or should we also focus on human characters?
It depends. If you're looking at your then at work to do animals and face, they're similar because they both anatomy, but they're very different. I personally choose to focus on animal because I prefer doing animals and human. And some artists do both, but I would say maybe you have more of a character artist and creature artist. So at the end, you will end up doing both because they're similar. But I would say start with one and then do the other one. I would suggest always do at least one of each if you can. But I mean, like, to get like, if you want to get a creature modeler, start by doing animals, and once you get your first job, maybe do a character, because you will understand a lot of things while doing the character, and then you can go back to animal and you can switch. It's like being a generalist or being a specialist. I've decided to specialize to animals and creatures only. Some creature modelers have decided to specialize into characters only, and some others into both. And so it's really up to your preferences.
Yeah. Okay, great. Fantastic. Yeah, I guess you want to kind of, focus your attention on the things you want to do rather than the things people want you to do sometimes.
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nicholas. We'll call it quits on questions there, because it's getting late.
Okay.
Again, a huge thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope everyone who has been watching this enjoyed it and learned a few things.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And again, if anyone wants to learn more about creature modeling, Do check out Nicholas's recent tutorial that, again, like he says, covers the full process from start to finish, and you'll be able to make, fantastic creatures yourself, hopefully. And if you do make anything, do share them with Nicholas. I'd love to see them myself as well. That would be amazing.
Yes, and do not hesitate to contact me through via Instagram or Facebook. I always, as much as possible, I try to answer them, and I'm always happy to help you if you have like any question or feedback. I'm always more than happy to give my thought on your work. So yeah, do not hesitate.
Great stuff, amazing stuff. And again, thanks everyone for attending. This is
Thank
the
you,
last
everyone.
masterclass of 2020 that we're running, and I think next year we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up. So I'll post all that out soon. So again, Nicholas, thank you. Have a good festive period.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Have a good Christmas.
Well.
Have a good holidays.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.